Every day, millions of people point their phone at a strange collection of black squares, and within a fraction of a second, a website, a payment, or a concert ticket appears as if by magic. Welcome to this explainer, where we are going to dive deep into the brilliant engineering behind a technology you probably use every single day. I mean, think about the sheer number of times just this week you've encountered one. You walk up to a restaurant table, sit down, pull a glowing rectangular piece of glass from your pocket, point it at a tiny printed square, and instantly a fully interactive menu is right there in your hands. We see these little matrices everywhere, on billboards, plastered on tickets, embedded in TV commercials, yet very few of us actually stop to think about the incredible mathematics and structural design hiding right in plain sight. So today, we're decoding the matrix. We are uncovering the hidden genius contained within QR codes. Consider the sheer mystery of this everyday interaction. Millions of us point our cameras at this strange, almost alien-looking digital mosaic. And then, bam, within a fraction of a second, a digital payment clears or a boarding pass authenticates. And the crazy part, this all happens without you typing a single key. It happens without connecting a physical wire and without relying on an internal NFC chip. It relies entirely on your phone's camera capturing ambient light that's bouncing off black and white ink and then feeding that into an algorithm. It's so fast and honestly so seamless that we just take it completely for granted. But how exactly does your phone look at a completely static image and instantly know what to do with it? To really understand this magic, we actually have to travel back in time a bit to 1994. At that point, the world relied entirely on the standard 1D UPC barcode. You know the ones, those familiar vertical black lines you still see on grocery store items today. But here's the thing, traditional barcodes had massive limitations. They're fundamentally linear. They rely on a mechanical scanner shooting a single narrow beam of red laser light across varying widths of physical bars. Because they're strictly one-dimensional, their data capacity is incredibly small. We're talking a maximum of roughly 20 alphanumeric characters. For the booming, hyper-fast-paced world of global manufacturing in the 90s, these simple linear barcodes just weren't cutting it anymore. They simply couldn't hold enough data. Enter Masahiro Hara and his research team at a Japanese company called Denso Wave. They were tasked with solving a huge problem, inventing a system to keep track of a staggering volume of automobile parts. Picture the factory floor for a second. Workers were spending hours out of their day frustratingly scanning 5, 6, or even 10 different traditional barcodes on a single cardboard box just to log one complex transmission component. It was a logistical nightmare that caused massive human error, worker fatigue, and severe inefficiency. Hara wanted one single label that could hold all of that data at once. And so, in 1994, the QR, or Quick Response Code, was born. It went from a highly specific factory tool to an international ISO standard, eventually surging globally into the everyday powerhouse we know today. Now, what is truly fascinating here is the specific inspiration behind the design. Masahiro Hara was actually influenced by the alternating black and white stones played on a traditional Go board. If you've ever seen a game of Go, pieces can be placed anywhere on a two-dimensional grid, which allows for infinitely complex patterns. By expanding from a one-dimensional line of physical bars into a two-dimensional matrix of black and white squares, his engineering team completely liberated the data from a single linear sequence. This quadrangular configuration allowed them to encode complex Japanese kanji, kana, and deep alphanumeric codes all onto one single dense grid. The data density literally exploded overnight. Let's dive into the actual structural anatomy of a QR code, starting with its absolute most recognizable feature. Whenever you look at one, you will always, without fail, see 3 large, superimposed concentric squares, located at the upper left, upper right, and lower left corners. These are known as finder patterns, and they basically act as digital anchors. They're the secret key to omnidirectional scanning. Think about how groundbreaking this is compared to a traditional barcode. You don't have to perfectly line up a laser beam like a grocery store clerk. You can scan it upside down, from a weird side angle, or while speed-walking past a poster on the street. Those 3 squares instantly tell the software exactly where the code is and which way is up. But you might be wondering, how does a scanner distinguish those specific squares from, say, a square window on a building in the background of your photograph, or a checkerboard? Well, the engineering here is profoundly brilliant. The researchers scanned countless pages of magazines, packaging, and real-world landscapes to find a visual pattern that almost never occurs naturally in human print or nature. And they found it. They discovered that the alternating black, white, black areas of those concentric squares follow a precise mathematical ratio of 1:1 to 3:1:1. No matter what angle, skew, or distance you scan from, that specific sequence prevents false positives and basically screams to the image sensor, hey, over here, I am a QR code. Along with those big finder patterns, the code relies on a few other really clever structural guides. If you look closely at a larger QR code, you're going to spot some smaller concentric squares near the bottom right. These are alignment patterns, and they're used to mathematically correct for extreme angles or perspective skew. But even more clever are the timing patterns. These are tiny rows of alternating black and white dots connecting the big anchors. Think of these as a digital metronome, or maybe a ruler. Let's say the code is printed on a highly curved surface, like a disposable coffee cup. The timing pattern ensures the software still knows exactly where column 15 and row 20 intersect without ever losing its place. Oh, and we absolutely cannot forget the quiet zone. This is a mandatory blank margin surrounding the entire matrix, and it acts as a vital digital buffer. Your phone's processor desperately needs this visual breathing room. Without the quiet zone, your camera might bleed into the busy, colorful graphics of whatever is printed nearby. Imagine scanning a cereal box. Without that blank border, the algorithm might accidentally try to decode the cartoon mascot's face as part of a website URL, completely breaking the entire process. The quiet zone effectively isolates the math from the visual chaos of the physical world. So how does a long website URL actually become a bunch of black squares? Well, the system uses 4 standardized modes to efficiently translate information into binary data, ones and zeros, where a black square is a 1 and a white square is a 0. Numeric data is highly compressed, while alphanumeric, byte, and kanji modes take slightly more space. To really understand the sheer power of this, consider that a massive version 40 QR code can hold over 7,000 numeric characters, or nearly 3,000 alphanumeric characters. To put that into perspective, you could quite literally compress an entire page of text from a novel into a digital space the size of a postage stamp. It's wild. Once the text is fully converted into a massive string of binary ones and zeros, this payload needs to be physically drawn into the remaining data area. The algorithm essentially acts like water, pouring the data into the matrix starting from the bottom right corner. It snakes its way upwards and leftwards in a highly specific zigzag pattern. As it fills the space, it gracefully dodges around the fixed alignment patterns, navigates through the timing lines like it's running a digital labyrinth, and fills the empty space until the entire payload is translated into the unique, randomizing-looking mosaic that you see before you. And when you finally point your phone camera at this completed grid, the scanning process happens in a series of lightning-fast computational steps. First, your camera's digital image sensor captures the frame. Second, the processor converts that image into stark, high-contrast grayscale to maximize the difference between the dark ink and the light paper. Third, it locates those 3 big finder patterns to detect the orientation and correct the skew. And finally, it extracts the labyrinth of zigzag binary data, converting thousands of microscopic black and white squares back into readable text. And the craziest part? It executes all of this flawlessly in just a few milliseconds. But the true hero moment of the QR code, the thing that elevates it from just a neat factory trick to a globally dominant technology, is its superpower: Reed-Solomon error correction. This is a complex mathematical algorithm operating over a finite field, specifically Gauss field 256. At a high level, this polynomial math creates mathematically linked synonyms of the data. If a few words in a sentence are lost, the mathematical context essentially saves the overall meaning. This is incredibly powerful stuff. In fact, it's the exact same mathematics used to transmit data from the Voyager space probes across the solar system, and the exact same algorithm that prevents your scratched CDs and DVDs from skipping. The way it achieves this resilience physically on the code is just mesmerizing. By using these polynomials, the original message is broken up into several error correction blocks, which are then physically interleaved together. Imagine taking a fresh stack of cards and perfectly shuffling it. Because the sequential data is shuffled and spread evenly across the entire matrix, localized damage behaves entirely differently. If someone takes scissors and cuts a giant hole right in the middle of the code, they aren't completely destroying chapter 1. Instead, they're just removing a few random letters from a dozen different paragraphs, all of which can easily be deduced and guessed by the remaining context. Because of this, QR codes natively support 4 levels of error correction, ranging from level L, which recovers about 7% of data, all the way up to level H. At level H, which stands for high error correction, an astonishing 30% of the total data bytes can be completely destroyed, covered up, or physically obliterated, and the code will still scan flawlessly. 30%. Now you might be wondering, why doesn't every code just use level H? Well, higher correction requires more backup data, which results in a denser, larger grid of smaller dots. So a clean marketing poster might use level L to keep the visual design minimal, while a greasy, grimy sticker on an industrial factory floor will use level H to survive the grit. Take a second to really let the resilience of this technology sink in. This error correction is exactly why a QR code out in the real, messy, physical world is practically indestructible. A paper menu at a busy outdoor restaurant that is badly scratched, stained with spilled coffee, crumpled up, folded in half, or literally missing torn pieces, doesn't stop your phone's camera from opening the link. The scanner just mathematically calculates the missing polynomials and reconstructs the data instantly, on the fly. The built-in mathematical redundancy completely defeats the physical wear and tear of the real world. And it's this incredibly robust design that has fueled a literal global revolution. Consider the fact that a technology invented simply to track car parts now powers massive digital payment networks like Alipay and WeChat Pay, authorizing billions of dollars in daily transactions. They act as the backbone of touchless healthcare, they trace global logistics across massive supply chains, and they authenticate mobile boarding passes for millions of travelers every single day. What started as a hyper-specific solution on a Japanese auto parts factory floor in 1994 has remarkably scaled to become the undisputed backbone of modern, touchless global infrastructure. And you know those customized, artistic QR codes? The ones on marketing posters featuring a colorful corporate logo slapped right in the dead center of the grid? Well, Reed-Solomon error correction is the hidden secret behind those too. Here's the great irony. Marketers think they are being incredibly clever by placing their branding there, but your smartphone camera algorithm does not understand the logo at all. It simply treats that expensive, colorful visual embellishment as a massive math error or damaged data. And thanks to that 30% error correction buffer, it gracefully and mathematically bypasses the logo entirely. As a final, really fascinating detail, their adaptability ensures they are completely future-proof. Actually, scratch that. They aren't even always square anymore. As manufacturing needs have evolved, Denso Waves standardize new variants like the rectangular micro QR code, or RMQR. It is designed to be incredibly long and narrow, utilizing the exact same error correction principles, but built specifically to fit on narrow edges, or the curved sides of tiny cylindrical test tubes in a laboratory. This ensures that even as modern manufacturing shrinks down into micro-robotics and tiny pharmaceuticals, this 1994 invention seamlessly scales down right along with it. So the next time you open your camera app and scan a QR code in less than a second, remember, you aren't just opening a website. You are interacting with decades of advanced mathematics, finite field algebra, and brilliant structural design. You're witnessing one of the smartest, most resilient information systems ever created, working flawlessly to connect the physical world to the digital one. But with technology rapidly evolving from flat physical screens into the realms of spatial computing and augmented reality headsets, one really has to wonder, what will the three-dimensional equivalent of the QR code look like in the next 30 years? Keep exploring and keep questioning the everyday magic around you.